We are going to give an overview of the Stanford Engineering Design Process. This is the design process we'll be using in this class, and it's also the one we used last year. There's 5 steps to it. There's empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And the way you work through this, you start and you kind of work your way through, and once you get to the test section, you may have to go back to the prototype, or you may have to go back further, and we'll kind of say that again at the end. But you sort of start here at empathize and work your way through to test, and then you kind of, depending on what happens in the testing part, you may loop back to previous sections. So empathize is where you get to know the group of people that you're designing for through conversations with them and observing them. You get to get a feel for, this is the type of person I'm designing for, because the better you know the group of people you design for, the better of an end product you will get. You'll be able to tailor that product to that group of people, and that leads to a better overall result and a better overall product that gets designed from considering who you're designing for. The define step has you all frame the design problem. You'll set parameters on what it is you're trying to do, and you'll develop a point of view statement, which a point of view statement frames the problem and also gives consideration to the group of people you're designing for. So the define step, your main objective is to generate a good point of view statement that frames the problem as well as considers the group that you're designing for. Ideate is where we generate ideas. We're not critical of ideas at this point. We're not trying to decide which one's good or bad. At this step, we're just trying to generate ideas that could solve the problem. You want to get all the obvious stuff out there first and start pushing your group and pushing your brain to go beyond the obvious stuff. So once you get all the conventional and obvious ideas out there, when you start looking beyond that, that's usually where innovative ideas or unique ideas come from, and those usually generate better products or more impactful products. So when you guys are focusing on the ideate step, just focus on generating ideas and try to work in the space beyond the obvious idea. For prototyping, this is where we take the list of stuff we generated and we start building mock-ups through either, we don't necessarily need to build like huge prototypes for each of them. We can start out with simple, quick sketches, quick cardboard cutouts, maybe rough CAD designs. And we start taking the ideas we had from the ideate step and we start building some things that we can start comparing those ideas and seeing which ones we like and which ones we don't like. And once we have all the prototypes or have some prototypes, then we start testing them, and this is where we start comparing those to each other and see which ones we like, which ones we don't like. And depending on what happens with the test, usually once you get done with the testing, you have to go back and refine your prototype and retest and refine it again, retest. And eventually, hopefully you end up with a product that both you and the group you're designing for are very happy with. If none of the prototypes work, you may have to go back to the ideate or the define and start back there and rework your way up to the test until you find a prototype that does work. So kind of wrapping it up, empathize is figuring out how the group you're designing for, figuring out how they think, who they are, what their worldview is, and just getting a good feel for the group that you're designing for is the empathize step. The define step is setting parameters and building a point of view statement, and the point of view statement phrases the engineering design challenge along with considering the group of people you're designing for. Ideate is just generating ideas that could solve the problem. So you look at your point of view statement, and then you generate ideas that would be solutions to that point of view statement. Prototype is where we start comparing all the ideas we generated and seeing which ones we like and prototypes where we start comparing those and getting those built, and then we start testing the prototypes, and that's really where we start saying this prototype's good, this one's not going to work. And then, after you kind of prototype and test, that'll start whittling your choices down. And eventually you'll hopefully find a good prototype that tests well, and you'll reach a point where both you and the people you're designing for feel like it's a really good solution to the engineering design challenge that you're trying to solve. And that is an overview of the design process that we'll be using a lot this year.